Tying up a Carrie Stevens pattern today. This is called the Shang's Favorite. Interesting. There's history in this fly and everything, but one of the interesting things about this is actually named after a gentleman, Charles Edward Wheeler, who was a client of Carrie's husband, Wallace, who was a guide up in the Rangeley area. Mr. Wheeler was actually very instrumental in getting Carrie to start tying flies. In the 1920s, he sent her a bucktail and feather streamer that he had tied up and some materials and things, and he suggested that she start tying flies, and she eventually did, and many of these eventually evolved into what are called the Rangeley favorites. Charles Wheeler was mostly known by the name of Shang, that's what it is, not Shrine, Shang. I don't know where that comes from, what kind of nickname that was or whatever, but she tied 3 different patterns in honor of him and because of him, which she did often with good friends and of the family and clients and things like this. She would create some patterns and name them their favorites or their specials or something like that. So there's a Charles E. Wheeler and the Shang's special also. This is the Shang's favorite. I will be tying the others up soon. Sometimes it's kind of hard to keep straight in your mind which is the favorite, which is the special, and which is the fancy or whatnot. But so this is the Shang's favorite. I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to start the Shang's favorite with my hook in the vise. This is a Partridge CS5-9X. It's a long shanked streamer hook. This is a size 4. And this fits the hackles that I have basically for the wings and their size, so that's why I chose this hook. I'm going to debarb the hook and attach my thread. There's a red floss body on the Shang's favorite, so I'm going to start with a white floss or a white thread using a Danville 3/0 waxed monocord for this thread. Other videos I've used the Danville 210 Flymasters Plus. I ran out of that, don't have any more, so I'm using this 3/0 waxed monocord, which is kind of nice because it has a little bit more wax on it than most of your threads. Almost all of your threads do have some degree of wax on them, but this has a little bit more, so you can really feel it on the thread, and it helps the thread to grip itself and other materials a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and put a layer of thread along the hook shank down to about 3/4 down the length of the hook shank. That's where I'm going to tie in the tinsel for my tag and rib. There is no tail on the Shang's favorite, so there's just a silver tag and a silver rib. I'm going to use a Danville's Mylar tinsel in size 10. I'm going to attach this with the gold side up. Anchoring that in there, I'm going to keep wrapping my thread all the way down. You could just tie that off and put a double layer of tinsel along the back if you want. I'm going to tie that and anchor that down to the end of the body and bring my thread back up. I'm going to tie in my floss. As I said, there is a red floss body. I'm using the Danville's 4-strand Rayon floss in red for this. I'm going to attach this along the hook shank, bringing the end of that down to about halfway down the body. And then I'm going to start wrapping my thread forward. Nice thing about the waxed monocord, like I said, it already has some wax on it, so you don't have to apply wax to help grip the materials a little bit better. You could add a little bit more if you wanted to, but this does a real nice job. It's a bit thick for smaller flies, but I like it for this because of the fact that it does cover the hook shank a little bit quicker, and I can get from one end to the other, keeping a fairly smooth underlayer of thread along the hook shank just a little bit quicker than, say, if I were using a 70 Denier or something like that. My thread at the end of the body, I'm going to apply that floss, and then the tinsel for the tag as well as the rib. Secure that tinsel in. Now we'll complete the body and the rib. Now I'll change over to my red thread. The head on the Shank's favorite is black with a red band in the middle. But I'm going to use the red thread, which is a Danville 70 Denier in red. Put a nice base and tie the fly with, and then I'll put two black bands in it, which looks a lot better than if I use black and then put the red on it. The red gets darkened up. Matching the red thread, I'm going to bring it back to about the end of head here, and I'm going to put in the underbelly. Shank's favorite has an underbelly of just some white bucktail. I've already clipped out a piece about a half a pencil in diameter and cleaned out all the short stuff. I'll go ahead and clean out anything else or any hairs that are kind of going wild or extra long on this. I'm going to tie that in so that it's about maybe a quarter of a shank past the bend of the hook. Securing that in, I'll trim away the excess, and then I'm going to put the throat in. Throat is some white hackle. I'm using some white Schlappen for this. I'm going to tie in 3 bunches of Schlappen here. I'm going to have one underneath. It's going to go about halfway down the body, and then one on each side. And this is designed mostly to help to obscure any materials as you're tying them in and moving forward. If you try to tie all of this stuff in on a lot of her flies right in the head space here, it's going to bulk the head out a little bit. So you tie in, say, the bucktail a little bit further behind, then you put your throat in a little bit further up on the sides like this. It's going to cover up any thread wraps or where that bucktail's tied in there, and so on as you move forward. That's the idea behind it, and it tends to work, I think. I'm going to tie in the second clump on my side, and then I'll get another clump tied in on the other side. I'm going to clean this area up a little bit. This is just to tidy this up a little and make certain I still have a nice platform here for tying in the underwing. Or I should say the whole wing, because it's not. There's some peacock herl in here, and she has it listed in the recipe, or I should say in the Hilliard book, it is listed in the recipe as the peacock as part of the wing. I think some people, including myself, sometimes refer to it as an underwing. I'm using some strung peacock herls here. I got anywhere from 4 to 6 strands. I usually do about 5 or 6. Get these matched up with the tips fairly even. They don't have to be perfect. You're going to have that about the same length as the bucktail. Tie that in on top, securing that in, throw away the excess. And again, I'm going to clean this area up a little bit. Now we're going to be putting in the rest of the wing. I just want to make certain I have a nice smooth area for tying that in. So the rest of the wing on the Shang's favorite is Grizzly hackle. So there's 2 Grizzly hackles on each side. You have 4 total. So there's 2 Grizzly hackles here. And then there is a shoulder. In the recipe, it calls for a white duck breast feather dyed red. I've used this in another video not too long ago where I mentioned I don't have the white duck breast feather. Can't find them. Haven't done an exhaustive search, but I've looked for them. This is actually a hen, a whiting hen cape. Has the right nice size to it and everything, right shape and all, and it's dyed red. Now, my particular cape, a few of the feathers have some defects. They have these little dark spots in them, things like that. And these are natural products, so it's seldom that you're going to get them just perfect the way you want. But it has the shoulder, the red shoulder, and then it has a cheek of jungle cock on it. I'm going to get these both matched up with my tips all even and the base of the front of the wings even. Trim away the excess on the rachis. Then I'm going to tie these in. I'm going to tie this one on my side first so that you can see this. As I tie this in, I have it just not quite on the very top, but on the top of the hook shank in this area on my side, so that it's just kind of up in that area right there. Lays it nice and flat along the back here, or I should say along the hook shank. And then I'll tie the other side on. Just opposite. Get a few wraps in here to secure that in. Then I'll show you how it's just on the other side on the top, but on that side of the hook. So both of them lay together. And you could put these both together and tie that in by holding both of them down if you want. Problem that you have, or at least me, I like to have each wing kind of on the side of the hook shank, not cocked up at an angle, but on the side. And it's tougher to get that on there, splitting those apart so they go down on both sides of the hook shank. It's easier for me just to tie them in one at a time. Now I clean up this whole area. I make certain that I'm covering up all the materials, the butt ends of those materials, with thread wraps as I make the head of the fly. My thread just moved there. And what I'm finding at this stage here is I'm better off putting some wax on my thread, because that wax will help grip itself. As you can see, I had a little bit more thread right there that slid off. And as I said, I'm finding that it is a lot easier and a lot better for me to have some wax on all of this. I get better thread control by having a little more wax on the thread. So I'm going to, working my way from behind the eye of the hook rearward, I'm going to shape the head here, making certain I'm getting all the butt ends covered up. A little more wax on there. I also want to make certain I'm getting wrapped down so it's all pretty uniform. I got a black band that's going in the back here. We'll cover some of that up. A little more wax. I've found also that in other videos I've mentioned that I occasionally have issues when doing a whip finish. As I cut the thread after the whip finish, it comes out from under the wraps and I get a little pigtail. What I'm finding is that if I put some wax on that thread before I do that whip finish, that's much less likely to happen. So the wax is more and more, as I am tying flies, the wax is becoming one of my best friends. So, didn't mean to break my thread there. I wanted to actually cut it. So now I'm going to switch over to my black thread. The black I'm using is a Danville 70 Denier in black. Already got some wax on this. I'm going to attach it first on the back side, almost to the very rear portion of the head, so that I can move those wraps backwards and get a jam knot on that tag. I'll keep wrapping backwards just a little bit here at a time, making certain I'm getting all of the red thread over here covered up. Some of that white that you see on there is not a gap in the black wraps or even the red. It's the wax that does that, but it dissolves with the fly tight that I use, so it's not an issue. And then once I get the lacquer on there, it isn't like you're going to have those little bits of wax like that on there. So now I'm going to do a whip finish on the back portion. And then I'll reattach the black up on the front section and put in the band up front. Again, I'm finding that the wax is very helpful here. Much less likely to have that thread pop out or slide around. Now, if you wanted to, you could wipe off some of that excess wax with a little bit of denatured alcohol before you put any head cement or anything on it. Like I said, fly tight that I have that's the solvent in it, and it's not a problem. I haven't found it to be a problem. I'll attach my black thread up front and just keep wrapping backwards a little bit just to put that front black band in. I want to be careful. It's very easy to bulk all this up as you're tying that in. So just get what you need to cover it up, put that black band in there, and then you'll finish that off. Trim away my thread. Get some head cement down under here. Still had that little bit of thread right there kind of poke out. Head cement's going to set that up in just a minute, and then I can trim that off, or I can even put a first coat of lacquer on there to solidify that, trim that out, and then put the second coat. So that's what I'll do in a minute, is put some coats of clear lacquer on there to protect that, and that will complete Shang's favorite. So look in the future for the Shang Special and the Charles E. Wheeler, which also will be coming out in the coming weeks and everything. But that is the Shang's favorite. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com, where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.